Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. And we're at episode 21. So you can find the show notes if you go to beabrillianthuman.com/21. And if you've just found me, welcome. I'm so glad you've happened across our little podcast. And I do hope you enjoy today's show and stay with us. And thank you for you regulars. As you know, and I always say, I do so appreciate that you choose to spend this time with me as we look at the area of becoming a brilliant or a more brilliant human, really about looking at navigating this wonderful world of personal development, spirituality, awakening, whatever word you want to use for all of that. And do remember to subscribe. When you subscribe, you get notifications every time a new episode comes out. Plus, you know what? It also tells those wonderful podcast platforms that people are subscribing and other people are more likely to find it. And I'd love to grow the listenership. And also it's great with word of mouth. This northern life's getting to me. Word of mouth is a really good way to tell people about, to share the podcast. So if you like what you hear today, do go tell somebody about it. And of course, I'm always open to feedback from you. There's a place on the website, beabrillianthuman.com, where you can leave me a voice message, literally a voice message. And you can find me on social media, normally at joelyoungmpa.com. Not .com, you see, that's the other website. Oh, I'm on it today. At joelyoungmpa is my handle across most social media networks. So you can find me there and leave me a comment, which is what, and shout out to Jane did on Instagram. Jane is Duvet Day 40 on Instagram. And she said on the episode 18 post, which was 4 things birds can teach you about overcoming fear. And she said, first time I've caught your podcast, really found this episode inspiring and enlivening. Well, thank you for that, Jane. It is so great to have this feedback. I love to know how you respond to these episodes that I put this time and love into. And so thank you for that. So if you do leave a message somewhere, I'll give you a shout out. And there we go. So today, the title today is Anatomy of the Soul's Dark Night, How to Recognize and Navigate the Dark Night of the Soul. So we're delving into the dark night today. So chances are, like me, if you're listening to this podcast, then somehow you have like a deep, I call it a deep soul prayer for growth. And, at times you might feel that prayer deep inside you, like a growl. I kind of imagine it like the kind of sound a flower would make, just as it prepares to crack open the bud. But there is, as growth-seeking beings, is that saying, be careful what you wish for. But you knew that, right? Because let's face it, the life of a growth-seeking being, it's not about maintaining stability. It's not about settling for normal, and it's rarely about security or striving for or subscribing to the known. Of course, we welcome these these wonderful moments of security and knowing as passing phases. But the truth is that growth requires chaos. It requires destruction, dissolving, and profound not knowing. So I'd say be under no illusion that looking for growth will take you to your edges. After all, it's only by going, beyond your edges that you enter new territory. And of course, it's worth remembering that growth is happening all the time. But sometimes a deep soul prayer will take you right into a deep, dark night. And what I found is there are kind of specific qualities in that process, which I'd like to share with you today, because it is one of those things that people talk about, or maybe you've experienced it. Um, and it's very tricky waters to navigate. So I'm hoping that what I share with you today really helps you with that. And I must give credit to my colleague, Marion Young, no relation. She is part of the Inner Journey Clinic, which I founded 12 years ago now. And several years ago, I was going through some stuff, and she helped me realize that I was experiencing a dark night of the soul at that time. So I'm leaning very heavily into her framework, but really making it my own and sharing my own experiences from it. So does that sound good? Are you ready? So let's look at the anatomy of the soul's dark night. Okay, so as I said, growth's happening all the time, and we do go through natural growth cycles, not all of which are what you'd call a dark night of the soul. A dark night of the soul, I would say, is those times when you go really sort of into the very depths of you. And you'll see as I lay out, I've turned it into sort of 6 stages of the dark night of the soul. Maybe you'll recognize there are certain traits within it that sort of define it as a dark night, as distinct from a general healing cycle. I think it'd be fair to say that these different stages are there in a milder form to some degree in most growth cycles, but they're particularly acute when it's a dark night of the soul. So I'm going to go through the 6 stages, and then for each of them, I'm going to sort of offer you sort of my tips, my words of advice from my own experience of how you can best sort of navigate them or relate to them or experience them or support yourself through each of the different stages. All right, so it starts with stage 1, which I call a deep breath in. So stage 1 really is the preceding phase. In a sense, it's often a signal that it's coming is when you get to this point. And it can come as like a spiritual high or like a sense of completion or a breakthrough that appears to settle things. So again, a dark night often is the beginning of a really deep, brand new opening, and often the beginning of a whole new phase in life. So that sense of completion or a sense of, I made it, is sometimes the sort of the herald of a dark night to come. And it can last for quite a while, like a sort of plateau of graceful yumminess. But inevitably, again, as a soul, as a sort of growth-seeking being, the soul gets restless, and life usually presents some kind of significant event, which then brings us on to stage 2. So I guess my advice for stage 1 is, well, make the most of it. This is like, again, it's your blossoming time, and you've kind of earned it on some level. If you get to that sort of plateau of graceful yumminess, just revel in it, enjoy it. There's nothing to do. You can be available to the signs of winter coming. Winter is coming. If they do, but just be present to the joy of the now. Just really revel in that peak, because it is in a sense it's a peak, and it's a peak that's there before, if you're going into a dark night of the soul, stage 2, which is the fall. So the fall is a crazy time. It can feel like the rug has been pulled out from under you. It's a time where what's been known kind of just falls to pieces, and there's nothing to cling on to. In the tarot deck, tarot generally has a symbology about it. There's the card of the tower. And the symbology of the tower is a tower. There's sort of a lightning bolt or a fire going through the tower, and the fool, which is the fool, is the archetype of the journey. The person who's going on the journey, the soul's journey, is jumping from the building and experiencing that fall. And it's the tower card is really about how what you have built around you and who you think you are is coming down. And the lesson really is to not fight it, right? Don't cling on to it. And in a sense, if it's a dark night, you'll find there is nothing to cling on to. In fact, any attempts to sort of maintain what's been can cause a great deal of pain and suffering. That's why the Tower cards lesson is don't fight it, go with the flow. It's happening anyway. Although, of course, it seems there's this natural human urge in us to try and cling to what we've known. But the fall is that time when it's just all coming down, and it can be a crazy time. So again, my advice here is, as much as you can, just embrace the fall. If you're falling, you might as well be flying. Just go, hey, here we go. I mean, that's easier said than done in the fall, but as much as you can, embrace it. Now, I want to say that MPA can really help you kind of smooth the road here, because it is a modality that really helps you to let go of things, to let go of that clinging, that attachment, because taking things personally is one of the ways that we really attach ourselves to certain forms. And if they're coming down and you're still identified and attached with them, that's going to make that ride, that fall, it's going to add a lot more suffering in. So I really do recommend that the MPA is a great way to support yourself through that. I mean, it's the same way that MPA has enabled some women to have, a swift and in some cases pain-free childbirth experience. Because it can help you not cling or hold on as much, which again makes the excess suffering. And again, if you think about it in childbirth, again, I own this fully. I speak as a man who will never give birth to a child, but I do have people who speak to me about it. I was present at my own daughter's birth. I understand, but in the surrendering and letting go of what's going to happen anyway, which is why I used that example of childbirth, there was an ability to make that process, which is in a sense innately has the potential for pain. In some cases, take the pain away completely, and in some cases, just allow there to be so much less suffering, and for it to be sort of the process to complete itself much, much quicker. So in case you don't know, if you go to the show notes, beabrillianthuman.com/21 for this episode, you'll find links there to download the MPA process for free. And you can always just go to mpa4.me/MPA sheet, lowercase, and you can get hold of it there. And in fact, any of my websites, you'll find somewhere that you can download the MPA sheet. And I think it's a really good tool in general in different phases for different reasons, but certainly in the fall, it will help you to sort of let go of that clinging, which creates the sort of excessive friction. Okay, so after the fall, you come into the void. And the void really is that part that we mostly identify with the dark night of the soul, because it is that that's the deepest, darkest part of the whole process. And the thing about the void that I find really fascinating is there comes a point where you realize there literally is nothing you can do. You are in the deepest darkness. I mean, it can be sort of signified by, a loss of hope and trust, or a sense of disillusionment. In a way, it's a time where, at a personality level, you're sort of choicelessly experiencing the deepest pain or the shadow. And again, it can come with feelings of shame or unworthiness, hatred even, which can be directed both inward and outward. All of these things can surface. But one of the things that I think is a real indicator that this is not just a particularly gnarly piece of process work you're going through, but a dark night, is that no matter what technique or approach you throw at it, any attempt to fix it will fail. And there's a reason for this, because the whole point of the dark night is it's experiential. The soul wants you to experience this shadow, this darkness. So it is a time of pure experience, and really living through it is the only option. So my advice here is to give yourself full permission to be in it. Experience is the point of this phase. I mean, you're literally living the stuff out of you. That's what's happening in this place. So all that reframing, processing, digging, and all that kind of thing, it can actually add suffering to the equation here. I mean, it is really helpful to get some support from someone who can remind you just to be. I think that's one of the most helpful things when you're in the void, is to have someone around who can just remind you. The point here is not to try and fix it, not to try and make it better. It's just to be with it, to live it, to experience it. A lot of times in my practice, my job is to do that, to remind people just to stop and be, rather than sort of charging it up with analysis and process work. So in the void, again, I want to really labor this point. It's about the experience of it. It is, yea, though I walk through the valley of death. It is the valley of death for you, whatever that looks like. In this phase of your soul growth. And it's a real challenge, because I know a lot of the time there's a lot of pressure, especially in the personal development, spirituality circus, if you like, to try and fix things. If you've got some crap coming up, then you need to do a process to fix it. Well, there's a good time. There's really good times for that where that's appropriate. But if you recognize that you're really in this dark night, then just drop those things. Let it all go. Just let yourself experience the nature, the flavor, the horror even of this that you're experiencing. And it's through going through that tunnel that you come out on the other side with the gift of what it is, and you can't rush that. Which brings me on to stage 4, which is dawn breaks, because at some point, seemingly by itself, the illusion just collapses, because it's the illusion that's created this experience, this suffering, and somehow it just sort of, it's like mercy steps in and just cracks of light appear. And the interesting thing about the dawn is sometimes you'll completely miss it. It can happen without us sort of immediately realizing it. It's like, in the same way that the day can break while you're still asleep. You're not always, I know some of you early birds are up for dawn, but a lot of people aren't. So it happens without you really realizing it at the time. So the other thing to say about this stage in when dawn breaks is, usually you will at some point early into it experience that there's definitely a lightening, but there's still likely to remain sort of some exhaustion in the aftermath. And it's really important to honor that. In fact, that's really the core of my advice for stage 4, where dawn breaks, is engage in lots of self-care and rest. Again, convalescing after an illness, 50 years ago, certainly 100 years ago, convalescence was fully acknowledged as a necessary part of the healing process. These days, it's like, as soon as you can, get up and strive on. Such an unhealthy attitude. But when it comes to going through a dark night, at this stage where dawn breaks, really take time for that self-care and rest. And the support of family and friends can be very important at this time. Just to help you with that sort of picking yourself up as dawn breaks. And also, again, give yourself permission to sort of to come out of it slowly. Don't force the pace of things as they go forward. Again, that pressure that you see in the modern world, and also you see it a lot in our world of personal development and self-help, is to kind of sort of push yourself to the next phase a bit prematurely. So again, I encourage you to give yourself time and rest. I often say, like, a wise lizard knows not to go running straight out into the desert when its skin is shed. It waits for that expansion and some solidity in its new skin before venturing out. And that's very much what's happened in the dark night. As you've gone through the void, you've been shedding a skin. So you've got that time just to sort of sit in the sun, let yourself expand before, it comes into a sense of solidness that you can take out into the world. And then after dawn breaks, you come in, and you've given yourself time and you've picked yourself up. You come into stage 5, which is rebirth, because suddenly it is time to emerge. It's time to take that new skin out into the world. And it's like you sense some inner shift happens and your energy returns, and it's time to experience yourself anew in the world. And it's really a time of discovery. I've talked in different episodes about the discovery mindset being, part of the sort of a really powerful growth attitude, really. But more than ever here in the rebirth, it's time just to be in this discovery mode and to see where the impact of what has taken place can be sort of determined and understood. And again, so my advice here is just to remember that this is very much another experiential stage. So again, give yourself full permission to live it and make the most of this discovery stage. Just stay really open. And I really encourage you to resist, the urge to label what you've become as you've come out of the void. Don't label it prematurely, as again, labels come with their limits. And I want you to give yourself space to sort of grow into it. Again, it's a discovery phase. So it's not like you come out and go, oh, yeah, I get it, it's this. You come out and start to live the newness. And as you live the newness, the sense of what it is and what you've become and who you've become can show itself to you rather than you sort of pre-figuring out what that thing was all about. Which comes to stage 6, which is understanding, which only once you've lived it, you've lived the new you, do you really understand like the whole process. Once you've taken who you are anew out into the world and lived it, it's when you lived it that you really begin to understand it. And it's really then that you can begin to celebrate the process and truly appreciate, the purpose and the benefit of the whole experience. So again, my advice here in stage 6 with understanding is let this understanding land in its own time. Again, I see this a lot in the personal development world. Is there's a rush to see the lessons. You're in the midst of all the shit and someone says there'll be a lesson in this. And you're like, I don't care. I'm just in it. Because instinctively that, the lessons will come later. With lessons come to a degree with a sense of hindsight. And you don't have the full picture till you've undergone all of the previous sort of phases. And in the dark night, it's necessarily the earlier stages are keeping you blind to the lesson. It's like if you had the lesson when you went in, you wouldn't need the lesson. And in fact, you wouldn't, if someone gave you a spoiler, spoiler alert, before you went into that process, then the process wouldn't do its work on you in the same way. So you're necessarily kept blind. So give it time to ripen. So again, when it's ripe, it will naturally fall from the tree in its own time. So that's the 6 stages, the anatomy of the dark night of the soul. Okay, so I kind of want to sum it all up. I want to say that the dark night can be a really tough time. It can be full of confusion and lostness. I mean, really, you're meeting a fundamental aspect of your shadow, which ultimately will grow you into something much greater. And I really hope that by sort of laying out this map of the journey of the dark night, it helps you to sort of recognize if you or someone you love is in the process of a dark night of the soul, and you can move through it with, as resistance-free as possible. Because while you're going through all those stages, there are ways that you can, same with anything really, you can navigate it as gracefully as possible without detracting from the experience, which is very different from fixing it. Or you can really hinder it, which again, because it's the nature of it, there's no escaping it, just tends to slow it down, agitate it, add additional, what I would call unnecessary suffering into the experience of it. So again, my strong intention here is to offer this map and just give you these indicators and there's these ideas of how you can best support yourself as you go through it, or indeed get support of different kinds throughout the different process. And of course, as if you're new, you don't necessarily know, but if you're not new here, then you know that you can always come to me for some one-on-one support. Just kind of look at the sessions. Go to joelyoungnpa.com/sessions and you can find out details about that. And also you can book a 10-minute free conversation with me if you want to just sort of have a conversation about whether the sessions with me are right for you. Then you can go ahead and do that straight from that page. Just click the button that says, I call it a 10-minute clarity call. You can book that with the online calendar. So let's do a quick recap of the different stages for you. So stage 1 is a deep breath in. So this is like a spiritual high and a sense of completion. And my advice is to enjoy it while it lasts. Then we go into stage 2, the fall. This is where the known falls away and there's literally nothing to cling to. So just let go, surrender to the fall, because that clinging will cause additional friction, which will only add suffering. Then you come into, I guess, what is the core of the dark night, what's most recognized, which is the void at stage 3. This is the deepest darkness. And the thing to remember here is there's nothing you can do to fix it, because experience is the point. And it's great to get support during that time. And the support isn't about support to fix it. Support is to remind you to just be, because there's so many strong pulls in that phase to try and escape it. I mean, one of the great lessons, I think, I think I've gone through 2 very distinct dark nights of the soul. And in both cases, I think there's a strong sense of just what can I do to escape it? But the realization is, and then the lesson in a way, the meta lesson of it is you cannot escape this. And then stage 4, when dawn breaks, that's where, I mean, the illusion's going to collapse by itself. The light comes in, and you might, just to recognize, you might not realize it at first. And chances are you'll still be exhaustion. So this is a time for self-care, just resting in the new light that's there. And then you come into rebirth, stage 5, where that you just sense that in a shift. It's time to take this out into the world. Your energy returns and start discovering, who are you in this new phase, and not to label it, but again, just to live it, so that the experience will inform you. And you can come to stage 6, the final stage, which is understanding. And that's where, after a time of living it and experiencing it, that experience brings understanding, and it's then that you can celebrate the process and truly appreciate its purpose. So again, don't rush the lessons, don't rush labeling the lessons or forcing yourself to find the lesson in that challenging experience. All right, so I hope this has been super helpful for you. That's a wrap for me. As ever, I hope it's stirred you, it's touched you, giving you a perspective that helps you to up your game, or at least handle these situations in a more graceful and kind way to you. And remember, if you like what you hear, go tell someone. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast, whatever platform you are. I'd love your feedback. You can check out all the show notes, as ever, at beabrillianthuman.com/ then you just need to put the number of the episode. This one is 21, so beabrillianthuman.com/21. And again, those sessions, if you want to get some support from me anytime, or just have a look at them, or book a clarity session with me for free, then you can go to joelyoungmpa.com/sessions. I hope you have a fabulous week. If you are experiencing a dark night of the soul, or you know someone who is, you can point them in my direction. Or again, if it's you, you have my deepest respect, admiration, and love at this time. And just know that it is a passing phase. And I hope that this episode helps you in some way. So with that, all that remains is to say adios until next time, and cue the moo.